This module is related to the evolution of globalization, that how globalization is going to evolve over the time. Here we are going to focus on the first component which actually initiate the globalization process. That was the International Trade Organization idea. Bretton Woods Conference actually conducted in 1944. The purpose was to engage most of the countries across the world start trading with each other, and that purpose need to be achieved through some kind of organization. So International Bank for Reconstruction and Development was established, International Monetary Fund was established, the concept of International Trade Organization was launched. But at that time, actually what has happened, that idea was led by the US, but US Congress refused to accept that at the later stage, so it was not approved. So that could not be established because they were considering that International Trade Organization is going to interfere into the economic matter of the countries by itself. So it should not have so much access. In the meanwhile, if we consider about the GATT, which is the General Agreement for Tariff and Trade, actually that was already in process and countries were thinking about to establish some kind of connection and relationship and reach to some kind of agreement regarding trade. So they reached through the GATT. So GATT was established because a concept of ITO was, International Trade Organization was going on during 1947 through the Havana Charter. But definitely all those countries which were participated in the Bretton Woods, they couldn't sign it. Not all. Some of the countries signed that. However, in case of GATT, situation was a bit different. It was established at the end of the 1947 and properly start operating in the beginning of the 1948. And that was actually signed by 23 countries initially. But within a year, from 1947 to 48, 56 countries signed that agreement. And later, it converted into World Trade Organization in the 1995. Actually, what was going on? The basic purpose of establishing such kind of organization was to induce or to convince the countries to do more trade with each other, because the First World War and the Second World War created so much disputes, conflicts among the countries. They moved towards protectionism. So instead of increasing globalization started decreasing. So just to facilitate the process of globalization, the concept of International Trade Organization was launched, but definitely the basic purpose was to reduce the tariff and to avoid any kind of protectionism, minimize the protectionism, and that was later properly established in form of GATT, and then it converted into WTO, World Trade Organization. So actually now we are living in that age when the World Trade Organization is effectively working. So the idea of ITO was over and it was dropped, actually you can say, or the GATT was properly established. It was signed by all the participants, all the countries who are part of the GATT agreement, and then more countries are going to join the World Trade Organization. The World Trade Organization is working hard, or it continue to work hard to increase or expand trade among the countries. The basic ways or strategies were increasing the trade through the preferential trade agreements and economic growth, ensuring the economic growth of these countries, as well as raising the productivity across the countries. If we try to compare the situation in 1948 with the situation in 2015, you may observe that only 23 members were initially signed this agreement, and then now 160 countries are the member of this agreement. So this means most of the world, if you just observe the green area, in here it is mentioned through yellow area, these are the countries who are the member, and now you can observe through this green area that most of the countries across the world are actually the part of the GATT, and which is now known as WTO. Second important thing, through this process of globalization, which was facilitated by the different institutions, including the World Bank, which is the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and then the IMF. Along with that, the major support were provided by the GATT, or which is known as World Trade Organization. So actually, if you observe what has happened over the time from 1950-55 to 2010, remarkable change has been observed across developing to developing countries trade. It increased much more, and specifically that has done after 1985 during a 1990s to 2000. So, and secondly, developed to developing countries trade, it also observed a remarkable change. Even the developed to developed countries trade is not going to change much more, but that is the remarkable sign of the globalized situation, that developing countries are going to trade with each other more and more, as well as developed countries are doing trade with developing countries. Second is important aspect of this is related to the GDP and the expansion of trade. GDP expanded over the time in rightward, and trade expanded upward. If we just observe, and I may draw the line from this 0, a 45-degree line, you may observe most of the countries are lying on the right side of this 45-degree line. And what it shows that actually the GDP is growing much more, but the rate of growth of expansion is not with the same rate. However, you may observe some kind of outliers here. The countries which have more trade, but their GDP is not growing much more, but they are growing their trade or expanding their trade. So actually, countries need to move from this area upward. Whenever most of the countries are coming upward from this line, they are going to become more integrated with each other. So they are going to increase the scope of globalization. Second important thing is the productivity, which is another way to increase the globalization process. And you may easily observe that Asia performed remarkably well. Within the Asia, productivity enhanced a lot. And even though Latin America and Africa, their productivity enhanced as well. Even though the structural change may not be positive, but productivity change remained positive within these countries, and it helped them to improve their level of production and productivity. So these are the diagrams which are actually showing that the performance of these international trade organizations remained quite well.